Hello, all, and welcome back. I'm Wilfred Brown with BreakingTheMentalChains.com and Worldwide Kings, and I'm here to present a quick talk on being black in the STEM fields. If you don't know what STEM is, that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I'm here with my good friend, brother, childhood acquaintance, Adrian Tullock. And I have a few questions to ask him because of his background, his experiences. And without any further ado, we'll get into introducing the man himself and asking him a few questions. So welcome, Adrian. How's it going?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on. Hopefully we got some knowledge here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I know that you're one to always drop a ladder down to people, and you love helping your community. This is a great opportunity to have you on today because you have such an enthusiasm for helping other people. Well, let's start with the first question, and that is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So as we've already said, Adrian Tullock's my name. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, raised there until just about middle school. From there, I moved to Texas, and I've pretty much been in Texas since. Give you a little bit about my background. So I graduated Elite Elsing High School. While I was there, I played football. That was pretty much the extent of my extracurriculars. Went to college, Texas State University, double majored in applied mathematics and computer science.
Wow.
While I was there, I got involved in a number of things. I led a couple of leadership conferences. I ended up being president of a Black student organization on campus. I competed in martial arts and pretty much got my hands wet in computer science and technology. So once I graduated from there, I went to work at a company in Richardson, Texas, Dallas, for you that don't know, Argo Data. And that's where I'm at now. And shortly after that, I'll be going to study data science at a grad school of choice at some point soon.
Awesome. That is incredible. And I mean, what can you say to that? That is a wonderful background. So you said you're originally from St. Louis. What part specifically in St. Louis?
So an area people know, of course, from history is Ferguson, Missouri.
Wow.
I grew up very close to there. In Florissant is where I first started out. Moved to Ferguson, Florissant. It's pretty much the joint kind of considered streets of those two neighborhoods. St. Louis in general, that's on the north side for those who don't know. So it's the north side of St. Louis, about Ferguson, Florissant area.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Did anything in your childhood get you prepared to go into math and science?
Nothing in particular I want to say. I grew up in a community that was low income, not a whole lot of people with college degrees in the area that I was in, especially in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so my childhood was pretty much run-of-the-mill standard. I mean, you see your family, you go to school, you come home, you do your homework, and that's pretty much it. Nothing too special about it.
Gotcha. Now, did you grow up in a single-parent household, or did you have your father and your mother both in your life?
There's not been a day in my life where I've ever stayed in the same household with my mother and father. They never married each other. They both married different people later on. But as my mother had me at young, 19 years old, she was still in high school, and she went to her prom with me in her belly. So, I went to my first prom before most people even put in school at that age. So when I was born, she didn't have a chance to go to college. She just really, she had to get a job, start taking care of me real soon without the help of a man in the house. So, I got to go to school. I'd leave school, stay at my grandmother's place. We stay there, walk back, and then until my mom got off work to maybe 8 o'clock at night. And then she'd come get us, put us to bed, and then rinse, repeat that. So we moved out of my grandmother's house at some point, but even then, it was just the same routine. Go to school, or when we moved, we go to grandma's house. So now go to work. We go to school, come home, wait for mom to get off. She takes us home and rinse, repeat that all week.
Right. So to make sure that I'm getting the picture correctly, so you didn't come from any money or anything like that. I mean, you're coming from straight blue collar, low income background.
Let's just say we're stranger to property rights.
Okay. So with that being said, right, I'm pretty sure, you're a mathematician by trade, so you understand statistics. So you understand the odds that went against you becoming a mathematician and a computer scientist. Can you kind of talk about how does that make you feel that you come from that kind of background, but yet you were able to make it into STEM?
So I'd say definitely one of the good points of how I was raised was not thinking of things too much in terms of obstacles. It was more so just, hey, young bug, go to school, get your good grades. We're proud of you if you keep that up. So in terms of how that affected growing up, I mean, kind of frame the question. I don't want to lose you. Make sure I'm answering your question.
Oh yeah, no, you're good. You're good. So I'm just asking, how does that feel, knowing coming from that background that you came from, making it into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics?
Yeah. So just to continue where I left off, you just kind of keep doing the best you can, and so getting good grades in school was kind of something I felt it's what I'm. It's kind of what the community around me was expected as far as my family goes. So it's what I was supposed to do, and I was capable of it, and it was rewarded behavior. So it wasn't until I, got into college, got into the classes that I was in, got into the field that I was in, and got old enough to look at statistics and numbers. And I'm like, man, the background that I came from, I don't have any peers.
Right.
I don't have anybody I grew up with that followed me to college or anything. I mean, my friends were proud of me that I went back and talked to after I graduated. But when I look at it, I was pretty much a lone dog in that field. I mean, luckily my little brother was behind me. He followed in my footsteps, went to college as well. But arguably it's because he had a role model ahead of him to do it.
Right.
And that was me. But me, myself, my father went to college, never graduated as far as I know. And I'd spent maybe a total of maybe 2 years around him, from being an infant to about 20-something years old. So I didn't have the benefit of that. My mom didn't go to college, so it's an amazing thing when you look at it, man. Because I look back at the family that I have, and I was like, man, if one of my cousins who grew up out there was able to make it to college and beat the odds and become a mathematician or something they really wanted to be, I mean, I would be able to know from experience. You're a standout example.
Wow, it's incredible. So, piggybacking on that, how did you get into math and science?
So I was coming out of college. No, I was coming into high school. And, I was a football player in high school. So when I developed a pretty good physique, I was like, I can use this to do things. And so back at the time, like you mentioned earlier, I have a pretty caring heart, and that kind of was worn on my shoulder as a high school kid. And so back then we had Hurricane Rita and Katrina going on, and I would see these people, going into these flooded areas or these broken down buildings to kind of help people. And I felt like I was an in-shape person. I was playing football. I could do that. So I decided I wanted to be a firefighter coming out of high school. That's what I wanted to do. And my mom was like, boy, you've been doing too good in school for too long to be going to do some firefighting. You taking your butt to college. So, and then her husband that she did marry at the time, Tony Moret, he's like, well, there's always money in computers. So STEM was never really my field, but he ended up getting engineering type of jobs. So he kind of talked to kid going to computers. And I had a god brother back in St. Louis. He worked on building computers as a kid.
Right.
And so I was like, that sounds pretty cool. I like video games. Let's go into it. There's money here. And that's kind of how I got into it. And like I said, that mentality of just do what you can, do the best you can, it just followed me forward.
Okay. So once you got into the STEM fields at university, was it what you expected? Was it harder than you expected? Did you struggle at first?
I'll tell the story this way. When I got into my first computer science class, I looked at the projects we had to do, and I would try to gauge how the class was doing. And I'm sitting there working on a project, and the kid next to me is sitting back there with his arm folded, just kicking it. It's like not really doing anything. He's surfing Google and stuff. And I'm like, what's going on here? And so I get to talking to these people, and the story comes out that this is my freshman year of college, and these kids have been doing programming for 6 years. So they're knocking out programs that's taking me 2 days to do in 2 hours or less. So I was able to compete because I didn't mind putting the 2 days of work in because I was trying to do the best I could. And I would get comparable grades, but it took an exponential amount of more time for me to come in. So I came in behind. I was not prepared for it coming in.
So did your upbringing prepare you for that type of work and that type of grind? Or was that something that you learned along the way?
I think good, wholesome values, I think, got me through that. I appreciated hard work. I knew I was going to have to earn whatever I got. And so if I wanted to get a good grade, I had to put in the work to get the grade. You know, if I knew I didn't know how to do something, then what do you do? If you're tasked with doing something, you figure out how to do it. You put the time in, and then you show up on game day, you perform. You know, it's kind of how it worked.
So a lot of people watching this video, they'll say, well, it sounds like you've always been smart. It sounds like you've always been highly intelligent. Maybe you're just blessed with brains. What would you say to those people?
That's a nuanced question. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, of course, the first argument is genetics. Like, you know, do you get it from your parents? And the way your mind works is, of course, unique to each individual. But I would say that's not what got me here. Mm-hmm. It was the fact that I put the time in, right? Of course, even if I have a good sense for numbers, like as an infant, I don't know multiplication. I don't know my tables. I'm not going to be able to do discrete mathematics because I was a smart 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. You know, they give you homework, I'm going to do the homework. And it's like, it's really that simple. Am I going to do what's being taught to you? Am I going to put the time in and practice? And if I'm doing bad at it, am I going to be fine with that? Mm-hmm. Or am I going to try to improve and be like, no, I can do this better and try again? So effort, I think, was the difference maker.
Okay. So I know Warren Buffett, he was known when he was in college, he could just look at a book, he could just look at numbers, and he would memorize all the numbers. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me you couldn't do any of that stuff. Nothing of that sort you did.
No, I was just a thinker as a kid, man. I spent a lot of time thinking about stuff, reflecting, because we didn't have a whole lot. So, I mean, I could maybe go outside, but if I didn't have a bunch of friends to play with at the time, I'm just sitting in the chair, looking out into the sun, just thinking, studying the concrete. It's just, but when your mind gets the chance to just work, or you take it, it's up to you.
Okay. So, as a Black mathematician and an engineer, is there anything you would have wished your parents would have done for you that would have made your journey a lot easier?
I think they did the best they could for us, given our circumstances. Mm-hmm. And of course, in hindsight, it's like, if I was going to be a mathematician, had I had a parent that went to college, cracked out more math books and did more of my homework with me, that would have made a difference, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, putting food in my stomach matters as well. And if, you know, my mom, she wasn't no mathematician by any standards. And my father wasn't really around that much to help where he had available. Mm-hmm. I mean, my father was an orphan, actually. Mm-hmm. So in hindsight, yeah, it would have been nice had they really taken more time to put the foot on my back. It's like, you know, if you're doing good at math at this grade, try something harder. I was like, oh, you're doing well? Then let's put this in front of you. Instead of maybe buying you this video game, maybe I can buy this math program or put you in this math class and really test you. Actually, there's a funny story I can add to that. Mm-hmm. There was a time I was in, I believe, 6th grade, and somehow I got on the radar of some special program at school, and I think my parents never even knew about it. They pulled me in, and it was like asking me all these questions that you didn't cover in class about Roman numerals and how to logically debate things. And I got pulled into a separate room for special children. There was about 3 of us in there, mm-hmm. and we got taken time out of class to do that. And I kind of felt like, well, if I'm smart, I should be able to perform. I didn't know you kind of have to get educated and tutored about these things. But I think I was in there for a while. After a while, they feel like I couldn't make too much more progress beyond that. But I had nobody invested in me helping me get any better. And so then I think I told that story to my mom about a year or so back, and she never knew about it. And so it's just, how can your family come in and support you if they're so unattached to your education?
Right.
You know?
And so, okay, there's we just had the movie, it was a great movie, Black Panther. Mm-hmm. Everybody just came back from Wakanda. And Wakanda was built on science, technology, and engineering. Mm-hmm. And so you have a lot of Black people that are now interested in those type of fields. So what advice would you give to parents trying to help their children perform well in STEM fields?
Okay. So if you see your child performing well at anything, of course, if you're doing your job as a parent, you're going to check the report cards. If you're really involved, if they have anything going on at school, you'll be able to talk to the teachers, get involved with whatever sports they're involved in, right? get involved with their curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And if your child expresses interest in something, you know, if your child wants to play football, I'll see people, they'll put their child in Little League football, they'll attend, they'll watch NFL with them, they'll go outside and teach them techniques. In the Black community, you don't see as much of that when it comes to children who are trying to be educated.
That's right.
Right? You have parents going to your football games, but they're not taking you to tutor sessions.
That's right.
You know, they'll invest in buying you a book that you can read to entertain yourself, but they won't buy you a book that's focused on educating you. Right? And it's not that, you know, they weren't conditioned that way, so maybe they don't think of it. But if you have a child that shows promise, that's one avenue. When they show you, support it, push it like you would an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Other is, hey, do what a lot of parents do when they want to get their kids into something like, hey, I was a boxer, I want to teach my kid boxing,
mm-hmm.
right? Put them in the environment to learn. If you show attention to a kid and you give them the attention and love that they need, they will do anything just to enjoy their parent because they need that type of love to survive. So if you want your kid to excel in science and technology, get your game up and do it with them and make it a fun thing.
Okay. And now, we grew up in A-Leaf, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in A-Leaf, we have, we're called the multicultural district, and we have people from all over. And we have a huge Asian population. And so basically, the Asians in our community, when they started to really show up, 15, 20 years ago, you could see the community change drastically. Mm-hmm. You started to see tutoring businesses on almost every corner. When it was mostly Black, white, and Hispanic, you could barely find a siblings learning center or anything. I think there was one on Cook Road or something like that, and then it went out of business. Now it's like 15 tutoring places, SAT prep places.
Yeah.
And so what do you have to say about our culture when it comes to African Americans and science and mathematics? What do you think our culture, how do you think our culture either hinders us from churning out a lot of mathematicians or helps us?
I thought there's a much wider community than what I've seen, so I don't consider myself the person to speak to the entire community, but I will speak to my experience of what I've seen. Like I said, I'll use myself as an example. I did well in school. My parents, they supported me doing good. They checked my report card, so there was a problem at school, they go address it. It's like, oh, you're doing great, we'll reward that behavior with money or other rewards. And of course, if you acted up, there was punishment. So, you asked me how you reward that, right?
No, I was saying, how does the Black community's culture?
Culture, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't gotten much sleep, so sorry if I'm a little slow. But beyond that, I think it's that we are a very entertainment-driven culture,
okay.
Right? We form a lot of, which is cool. You form your bonds by playing with your children, watching sports. Maybe you're in a different community where you have to work more. You can't always be around your kids. But when we get together, some parents may at some point coach their kids like, well, hey, come look at what I'm doing at work, or let me show you how I balance my bank account, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm older, the adults will talk about politics and housing, money matters, things among adults, but there's never really time to say, hey, there's less talk about coaching the younger generation amongst some of those. Because you do have your people in the community that are very active, but one-man army can't really address the community.
That is true. And I've just seen it from my personal experience. Yeah. I find that you don't have a lot of Asian kids who are, genius level mathematicians or anything like that. They're not writing out E equals MC squared and explaining that and solving these ridiculous equations as kindergartners or anything like that. But yet they consistently go to the top universities. They consistently graduate from the top universities, get the top jobs at Google, Amazon, HP, HPE. They're in research and development, and then they're often thrown into Black people's face and say, well, Black people, why can't you do just as well? And so you'll hear a lot of white supremacists, they'll say it's because they're smarter than you. On IQ tests, they do better than you. What do you have to say to people that say, well, look, Asians are smarter than blacks. They have higher IQs than blacks. And that's why they outperform us in math, science, and engineering.
Well, what I would say to people that have that perspective is do me a favor. I don't mind you having that point, but walk the walk and talk the talk to back it up. So take two of your own children if you want to. Give one the resources to be successful, keep food in their stomach, keep them focused on things that don't involve raising their parents' children. Let them do everything that lets them focus on being great. And then you take another kid and you make him wonder if he's gonna have food the next day. Or you make him wonder, if his mom's doing okay in the other room. Or just keep her away from most of his life, right? And tell me how you think that affects a child. Every person I know that is responsible and wants their children to have more things than they had and wants their children to go to the next level, they're investing more time with their children, they're putting more resources toward their child, they're exposing them to things they were ignorant to, right? It's what you invest, right? And sometimes if I only have $1, if it takes money to make money in the stock market and I don't have money, then it's not like I can invest to get a return. So if my parents were college educated or business owners, they have a lot they can teach me coming up. But if they didn't have the same resources and background to pull from as the next guy, then I'm kind of shorthanded, So it's what I would say to that entire scenario is resources is what makes the difference. I would dare you to put all the children that you think are dumb, that are of color and can't seem to perform, that are problem children, look at what they're dealing with that some other kid that's performing just as well may not be dealing with.
That's correct. And the problems that Black people deal with, right? Sometimes these are self-inflicted wounds, correct?
Yes, I agree. Some wounds are self-inflicted because at the end of the day, I do not advocate people not taking responsibility for their own choices and decisions. You can't take that away.
That's right. And of course, a lot of what we deal with comes from a system that was made without any of us having a right to vote, any of us having a voice. We still have slave laws in the books. We're over police. We understand all that kind of stuff. But we also want to. There's another side to the story. You have those people that say, yeah, but they don't take personal responsibility. What about the the 16-year-old girl that had the kid, no father? Why didn't they stay together? And then she could have went to college. So it's that side. So what do you have to say to that guy that says, well, they should just take personal responsibility?
Okay, I don't think people should ever be excused for taking responsibility for their actions, right? But I argue the same way. You're going to argue for a person on the micro level taking responsibility, but systems are important.
That's right.
So the implementer of a system needs to take responsibility. The benefactors of a system need to take responsibility, right? And the enablers for systems that do injustice to people also need to take responsibility. And just stick it within your realm, right? Because if you're going to say, well, these people aren't taking responsibility for keeping their kids out of prison. Well, who's going to take responsibility for over-policing in the Black community and us being incarcerated at mass rates for, they take in studies. You take the same crime for a Black person, man or female, and you compare it to someone of another race, and the incarceration rates are at least 3 times for African American, and the sentences are longer. And you have access to, oftentimes, due to, of course, the wealth gap, less resources to defend yourself than someone else.
Right.
So it's like, okay, if I decide to go up and shoot up a store and rob it, yeah, that was my decision. But if you do the same thing and you get 2 years and I get 5,
exactly.
Okay, I did my time. I accept the responsibility, but I'll get out and I can't get a job. I mean,
a very valid point.
Yeah.
Now, since going back to the theme of Wakanda and how Marvel always uses science and technology as a major theme within all of their comics.
Right.
They're always trying to push science and technology, space exploration on its viewers, on its fans. And so, as you saw in the movie, Wakanda was technologically advanced compared to the rest of the world. and it was all these black geniuses who had took this basically this rock that fell from the sky and turned it into this thriving empire. And so I wanted to ask you, if we wanted to build a real Wakanda, how important is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics? And also, second part of the question, how can we use science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to thwart our oppressors? How do we fight the system? Two questions there.
Okay, so let's start from a historical context. And I'll frame it with the answer first. Technology is to help make solutions. That's what you have a problem. You use your ingenuity, your brain, and your skills to make technology to help you solve a problem, right? And to go back to the slave era, right? People think, oh, these people that we brought over on these boats, all they did was just pick cotton. They weren't very educated. They just kind of did what they were told. Okay, so take that, and I'm gonna give you a scenario and answer it the best you can, right? So I go to the length of going across the ocean to find these lazy workers who don't know how to do anything but do what they're told to do.
That's right.
Then I get them and I bring them back over here and I put them on a plantation to just work for me, right? And so let's just say that's going very well for me. What incentive do I have to change the system? They don't ask no questions. They just do what they're told, and everything is fine. So why would I have an incentive to invest time and resources in building the cotton gin? I just I take my son, my homeboy, his friend. I'd like just beat the slaves harder, make them pick more cotton, and that's the simple solution. An African American man built the cotton gin. Why? Because if he has to pick the cotton, he's like, hey, there's a smarter way we can do this. We have expertise, right? So that's the kind of frame that technology is born from the need to solve a problem, right? And I use a good background to describe it, but that's kind of what it's for. And so for us to advance to a point where, what is the relevance of our using technology to build a civilization, right? Well, what are the needs of that community, right? If we're going to need resources, then look who's making money. If someone builds a company and they build some technology, or Facebook, right? It doesn't matter what color you are. You can make some technology. You can build a Facebook. It just takes the time and the resources. So if you need to use technology to get capital, or if you need to use technology to advance automobiles, right? The ingenuity to do that comes from people investing in science, technology, and engineering. So I think that addresses the point of where does technology play a role. There's a lot of ways you can make money. You need your bankers, of course. You're going to need your real estate people. You're going to need all types of skill sets. But those critical thinkers who are going to be able to go in and tell you why something is or isn't working, I mean, those people are useful. They save you money, for one.
So I'm saying, like, so we want to build Wakanda. And I'm saying, what role does science, technology, engineering, and mathematics play in us being able to do that?
Well, just name me any one empire that didn't have its piece of technology that's separated from somebody else. Whether it was war technology, whether it was banking or economics, what field of study or science was basically able to say, hey, we don't need any of that, and we're going to dominate any type of society. Just name one for them. You can't do it.
You can't do it. And so how has been answered. We know how. So you need some type of technological edge to be able to dominate other people or to protect yourself. As simple as that. Or to build any type of empire, right? So then the second part of that, right, was with what the how, right? How do we use it then in our current situation to fight back from the people that we feel are oppressing us?
So that's a larger question than what we just answered. How do we use the technology to fight our oppressors? Fight them in what way? Are we trying to beat them on the business front? Are we trying to outsmart them in the technology field?
All of the above. I'm saying right now, if you feel like you just said we don't have the resources, you just said all these things about the Black community that's not ideal. So how do you use science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to even the odds, or to make your situation better?
If you want to do it in education realm, then of course you need to start taking it seriously, right? You need to make sure your children are good at math. Of course they need to be able to read. That's the whole academic in and of itself. But being able to read will get you in the door. Beyond that is what can you solve? Can you critically think, right? And so maybe it's less of an argument for technology and more of a question of what are you going to invest in yourself that may lend you the ability to take advantage.
No, it's a technology question because I'm asking how does technology help us get there? I'm saying, how do you use technology? So, for instance, I work in the technology realm as well. So I understand that one of the major things, like if you wanted to take down an empire, one of the things that you need to know is cybersecurity. You need to have lots of cybersecurity experts. You could shut down power grids by cybersecurity. So if you felt like you were really being oppressed, you can use science and technology and engineering to engineer viruses. You can use science, technology, and engineering to expose emails, right? You could go find out what the FBI is doing. Are they watching criminals or are they watching Black Lives Matter? You can figure that out yourself because you can leave the email. So I'm saying, I'm trying to get Black people to start thinking about how they can use technology to amass power to defend themselves. And not only defend themselves, but to build for themselves.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that my area of expertise of saying, we should use technology to go to war for it. I'm definitely more of a, homegrown solutions type of guy when it comes to that. I'm just like, look, technology can fail you. But if I was to say, if I was going to say, just to answer that question for the sake of answering it, use technology to build, right? So we have, if you're going to call it a war, population-wise, we have the smaller numbers. We have the resource deficit, resource gap. But we're just as human as anybody else, right? So there's no reason you can't learn the ins and outs and the work of how to build something that anyone makes, or learn to make it or make it yourself better, right? I've seen them make guns out of 3D printers. Like if you want to arm yourself, you can start making your own guns at home that easily. Or if you knew how to take a gun apart or assemble them yourself, that's technology you can use for war. Or if you just need to learn, like you said, cybersecurity. Like I said, my godbrother at 12 was working on computers. Learning how to build them, use them in his own house. Didn't have to go out and buy one, just built them. And he ended up going into politics much later on. But just think, had he continued that path, like I'm building computers at 12, maybe I'll learn how to, build networks and start a company later. Then you can, of course, if you want to arm yourself with resources, start a technology company, right? Now that I know how to build something, I make the next technology is going to make me the next guy on the Forbes list. I can start hiring people and bringing them in the skill and making it so that, hey, being smart in engineering is actually going to be rewarded here. You don't have to come in with an electrical engineering degree and feel like, I got to make money on Wall Street because no one's respecting innovation here. Use it to build. Is pretty much the point of my answer.
Right. And I'm not saying that you have to go to war. I'm just saying there's ways to use technology to defend yourself. Okay. Like I noticed that you are very aware of how the government spies on you, how companies track your data, and because you're a technologist, you know these things. You know how to mash your what would you call it, your ISBN number? Well, that's on the book, but your internet address or whatever, your IP address. Yeah. So you know how to do those type of things, right? Versus another person cannot do it. So if they were like having a Black Panther meeting, right? And they're scared that they're going to be taken down like they were taken down in the 70s. Well, wouldn't technology be useful, right? If you want to not just be the person where you're always being attacked, you have no defense. Like you said, technology can help you. Why? Because you can 3D print weapons. Why? Because there's never been an empire on Earth that separated itself without being technologically advanced or having some type of technological edge. So we would have a whole nation full of full of Native Americans had white people showed up and the Native Americans had guns, right? You can argue that, right? Because even with them, dying of smallpox, they still would have had guns, right? And you can't, it's very hard to fight guns with arrows. And so that's the kind of things that I feel that the movie Black Panther addressed, because you have this country and has all this technology, and they have the ability to use that technology to protect themselves. And if they wanted to, if they chose to, they could protect other people as well with their technology.
Okay.
And so I think that's, you don't have to be a militant to realize that technology is powerful. And not understanding technology is detrimental to your survival.
Oh yeah, that's only more and more true going forward.
Right. And so, with that being said, how do you think the Black community should embrace technology? You spoke about how we like entertainment. We use technology. I mean, we have Black Twitter. We have Black Facebook. We have all these things, but we don't have a Black computer. We don't have an Apple. We don't have a Hewlett Packard. We don't have a Dell. We don't have any of that. And so what can should the Black community embrace technology more? Should we geek out more? Should we embrace geekiness?
Embracing it, I think, yeah, that's definitely the way to go. It's not that, Black people are just uninvolved or uninterested in technology. If anything, I've seen a lot of people in some of the communities I've been to, like, what's the new thing on the market? Or what computer is going to help me get the certain thing I'm trying to get done? What technology is going to be in this phone? Is the camera better? Does it help me do what I'm trying to do on my job? Can I check my email going back to BlackBerry for becoming the big thing? It's not that we're uninvolved or uninterested in technology. It's just that we've never really had a huge hand in being acknowledged in building it. Black people actually do have a history in technology and inventing, but I mean, you don't hear about it during even Black History Month. You just don't get educated about that. That's something you have to do on your own time and really learn to question, what's the motivation of saying someone else did it versus the other.
Right, but you do hear about it on breakingthementalchange.com.
Oh yeah.
You do. You do hear about it there.
Yeah, if you haven't
about that.
If you haven't started, you need to start there.
Right.
But do we need to embrace it to move forward? I don't believe it's the source of our problems, But do we need to? It's going to be hard to be technologically ignorant in the future, because everything they're going to do to you, at this point, is going to involve some type of technology or some type of legislation or some type of system. I mean, it's just that's kind of just where it is. So if you don't know how to defend yourself, to know that, hey, if you want to do something, you can take yourself off GPS. You don't have to have yourself tracked all the time, because then it says it's going to watch everything you do anyway. So if you just happen to be like, I don't want to have everything I'm doing put on blast all the time, you got to learn to be able to operate away from technology by knowing when technology is working against you.
Right. And, I would like to ask you then, what do you think is the crux of African Americans' problems? So what do you think is our problem in 2018? So if it's not technology and being technologically ignorant, what is it?
So there's partially a lack of self-awareness of our ability to look at our situations objectively and say that oppression is real. We know about that, but how much productivity am I going to get out of pointing the finger? I can sit here and say the system is rigged against me. They don't want to promote me. I can't seem to get the jobs I want. They're trying to lock me up at rates that are ridiculous compared to everyone else. True as any of those things may be, what am I going to do about it?
Right.
So it comes back to taking self-responsibility. And so this is whole talk about a lot of millennials want handouts, right? That's something that's been said about our people for generations. We just want handouts. We just want things. Everyone, we're fine with working. I mean, look at our history. We've been working since we've come to this country. The work is not something that's new to us. That's why we didn't complain when the Wall Street crashed the stock market crashed because we weren't making our money off the stock market.
Making our money off the
we get part of government loans to go to school, after the World War. But that wasn't us. We weren't. So I think that's really not not something that affects us equivalently with us.
So what's affecting us is what?
What's affecting us is we don't focus on education enough of enough sorts. Not even just going to school and getting your regular education, but identity education.
Now we're getting deep.
Education about your history, your family's medical history. Do you even know what you're going to be potentially going to get? Do you even know what to tell your doctor about yourself? Let alone going back and saying that, hey, do you know about who invented this? Do you know about who's actually pushing your needs in the government? Mm-hmm. Right? Do you know that, hey, if you actually want to be good at engineering, I can just go get an engineering degree? How many people have those though?
True.
You need to invest in educating yourself beyond the standard, because us as African Americans or Black people or people of color, whatever identity term you want to use, we are expected to perform 2 to 3 times better than our counterparts if we're going to come up. Mm-hmm. And so being more educated is a good way to go.
So, okay, so what I'm hearing here is like, we're not talking about university education. Mm-hmm. We're not saying that, everybody should go out and get a university education. That's nice if you want to do that.
You want to do that, right?
But what we're saying is that you can go use the technology, mm-hmm. use the internet, educate yourself about, health, mm-hmm. educate yourself about science, build things at home, right? Teach yourself how to cook nutritional meals, mm-hmm. teach yourself about nutrition, fitness, everything so that you can have an edge so that you can survive. Teach yourself about laws, mm-hmm. right? So be more well-rounded in our education. Seek education, seek knowledge. But then I would push back on that, mm-hmm. not to say that you're wrong, I actually agree. But then now with so much information, mm-hmm. there's a lot of fake information out here. So you have some people that, they'll tell you anything. They'll tell you that George Washington was a Black man, mm-hmm. and it's a cover-up. You got some people that tell you that all the Black people were Israelites, and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. All the Black people were all the North Africans were Black or something. I'll tell you all these things on the internet. You can find anything you want to find. Blacks are the real Jews. The Jews are the real Blacks. You have all this stuff, and it's like, well, who do you believe? How do you know what to believe and who to believe?
Right. Okay. Well, to find out who you are, you first discover who you're not. Mm-hmm. So if you find out who to trust and what resources to go to, you first find out who you can't listen to. Mm-hmm. And on the surface level, you start off by basically applying simple logic. Right? Someone tells me, hey, they're doing this over here, and this is the fact, and so this should basically, in any situation, tell you what your behavior or belief system should be. Fact check it. It's like, okay, send me an article, send me anything, send me a research resource. Send me something. First, fact check it. That's the quickest way to get around a lot of bullcrap. That's just the first surface level. But then beyond that, mm-hmm. there are still going to be things you don't know. Right. So from that point on, I'm going to use religion to start with. Mm-hmm. Especially the subject as that may be for people. A lot of people, I feel, do not read, at least in Christianity, as far as my experience in communities I go to. A lot of people believe in God, and they want to follow the word. They want to go to church. They want to be saved. And they want to do good by the people in their community. Amen. No problem with that, whether you're atheist or Christian, whatever. The problem I have is you don't read the book. If you're one of those Christians that don't read the book, I have a problem with you. Me personally, I will not call you a Christian if you have not read the Christian book. Because at the end of the day, if someone comes around and tells you to do something that's completely out of the book of Christianity, and you can't tell whether it being the truth or not, you're just a follower. You're not a believer. Yes.
And the reason I would say that to be true, because they could tell you that Jesus said this, or they could tell you that this, and you won't know. Mm-hmm. So like maybe we will know. We read the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. So we read it from cover to cover.
Yeah.
So we can say, no, Jesus never said that, but you see a lot of people playing online, they'll make a meme and they'll say something crazy, outlandish, and they'll say, Jesus said this. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, hey man, they'll think he really said that.
and you'll see this in a lot of media, and people do this with the Bible as well. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book is you take something and you just sprinkle some truth on it. And you just take it completely out of context. And they'll say, oh, Jesus said do this. And they'll take it out of context what it actually meant, make it meant something else. Or if you want to watch a news source, they'll say, look what such and such said, and they'll spew propaganda from that because they'll either cut the clip off at the beginning or the front, and then basically propagandize you with what their interpretation is, what you should believe in, because it's what's profitable to them.
Right. And it sounds like what we really have is a problem of critical thinking. And that seems like a theme. It's like, yeah, you can have technology but without the ability to critically think and create solutions, which comes from being able to critically think and use creativity as well, like to go through different scenarios and to kind of visualize these scenarios in your mind, and then use deductive reasoning and all those kind of things. You can't even use technology anyway. Technology then becomes your enemy if you don't have to.
Oh yeah, and of course, if you're going to develop critical thinking, how do you do that? Right? You don't get good at anything by not doing it.
Right.
So if you want to get good at critical thinking, you got to solve problems.
Right.
You got to look at things that make you knock on your head, and I can't figure out how to do this, and you don't quit. Because roadblocks are going to come. You're going to have questions about, hey, was that the truth? You're going to have questions like that. Is this actually how this is done? If you haven't tried it, you won't know. If you don't gather your own data, then everything's conjecture. Everything is he say, she say. So, quick cheat sheet. Math and working in that is a good way to develop some critical thinking skills. Work your way up, learn math, learn how to solve those. I would say when I was in college, to bring that up, having to solve math problems I had never seen before. Like for most people, I'm getting there to get a grade, get good, and get out and get a job.
Right.
And when you come in, they sit you down with some stuff you think you're never gonna need to use. You don't understand it, and they're so dumbfounded they don't know what questions to even start asking. It's intimidating, right? But you know what? You sit down, you crack that book out, and you take notes, you listen, you talk to people, and you learn as best you can. You keep trying. And what's happening behind the scenes is your brain is forming new neural pathways of how to think.
Right.
You're able to, it's almost like building that light speed highway between the sides of your brain that allow you to bring information back and forth. You're opening up canals of information so they can travel through. And that's just one example of how getting involved in, whether it be math, science, technology of some sort, anything that makes you challenge yourself, right? That's one way to develop critical thinking.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, that was a home run hit out of the park. But you did say something very interesting. One thing I like to touch on is you say you have to practice these skills. So I know in the Black community sometimes we have a problem with I don't know if it's just our culture or how it is, but we're really good at telling kids to go sit down and be quiet. Like we're really good at that. So like for you to get good at critically thinking, you have to be able to kind of debate things, and you have to be able to rationalize things. So you just can't say, go sit your behind down because I told you to. You gotta say, you have to teach that child to think through why you're telling them what you're telling them to do. And a lot of times, we come in from work and we've worked 14 hours, we ain't trying to play with a kid. We just like, hey, go sit down, get out my face. And we do that a little too often, whereas our children are very obedient and well behaved, but maybe they're not well thought out. Maybe they're not critical thinkers because maybe we're pushing them to not be.
Right, and I definitely don't want this to get painted as saying it's like, oh, non-Black parents are better because they don't experience these same problems.
No. We just don't speak on them because that's not us.
Yeah, of course.
Ain't got nothing to do with that.
But they gotta watch out for conspiracy theories. They're gonna take propaganda.
No. We ain't speaking about our people because that's our people. We ain't speaking about nobody else. We'll make another video for them. Right? From our experience, like I grew up that way. My friends grew up that way. You don't argue with mom. You don't argue with big mama. You don't argue with your daddy. You definitely don't argue with your daddy if you have the privilege of having one. You don't argue with no man really in the community outside your house. You know, we are a very respectful group of people that know they try to make us like be thugs and all this kind of stuff. A lot of times you around black children and you tell a black child, pick that trash up, help me with this, they're gonna be like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And that because that's most black households. We don't play that typically in our community. We don't play that in our churches, right? So is that something that we could work on as a people?
I agree. And I think it has to be juxtaposed with the fact that, you know, as a parent in the world that we have to raise our children in, they have to be mindful of power and authority structures.
That's true.
So of course, we're very protective of that. So it's like, no, do what you're told, listen to me, I know best. And to an extent, you can't lose that because at the end of the day, the child doesn't know more about the world than you do. So of course, in keeping that in perspective, there are times where it is much more productive to realize, hey, your child may just be trying to understand something. Maybe a stupid question to you, but to them, it's like I was considered a smart mouth kid, and I say, you know, for the longest time, it's just that if something didn't make sense to me, I would just ask, unless it was so punished to ask that I just stopped asking. And so it's like, well, don't question me. Like, I'm not questioning you. I'm questioning what you said because it doesn't make sense to me. You know, and so I'm trying to understand. But if you hit me across the head and tell me go sit in the corner or go threaten to beat me because I'm questioning your authority, all you're teaching me is not to ask questions.
That's right. And you can't basically, and I love the way you put that disclaimer out there, because nowadays you do have a lot of stupid people out here, and they will actually say, nah, you know, Worldwide Kings thinks this, Adrian Tullock thinks this, they think the whole black community does this. No, we're talking about our experiences, you know, how we have grew up in the communities, the place we grew up with different black people and black people. We're not comparing us to everybody else, we're talking about our experiences. I love the way you called that out for the idiots out there. Another thing is you talked about facts and fact checking. Now, nowadays we live in this world, and you know why we live in this world. Well, I'm gonna leave it at that. But we live in this new world where we have alternative facts. So it used to be we could look at some data and you could interpret some data differently than I could. I could interpret a situation a little differently than you could. We come with different perspectives. We talk it out, we'd argue it, whatever, and it'd be over. But now you have one person comes up with some facts and some data, and then somebody will come up with a totally different data set, right? And then, you know, now you're having arguments about people just creating their facts. You know, so, you know, you can find a website that says anything's true. You can find a website that says 45% of all people are lizard men, and then 62% of the world is owned by Jewish people, and you can and you know all this crazy stuff. You can find something that confirms anyone's bias. So how do you get around that?
So since we can't go to the place of Minority Report and read people's minds before they do anything, you have to have room for error in this system, right? But this is a good way to at least get started on not getting duped by the wrong sources.
Right.
Evaluate your source. Right. I'll use a very basic example to get this point across. So if I'm a 10-year-old, right, and my parents, they've raised me till 10 years old, they fed me, they've taken me to school, right? This person has my best interest, or at least my health involved in their evaluation system to some extent. So they care about me. So you take someone else who comes around and is like, hey, come over here, kid. Tell you something. This, and that. Why don't you do this? You know, you can make more money. You can do this on the side. And start trying to give these examples and tell me why it's good for me. Take a step back. Who is this person to care about me? You know, why? What is the value of this information? Of course, think about it logically, but evaluate the source. Let's take this to a higher level. So now you get to the point of, now I want to know, is Trump really involved in doing this scheme, whatever scheme you want to choose, but we want to evaluate something like that, right? Okay. If you're going to get base that information, because you don't know Donald Trump personally, sorry, you can't ask him. But one news source is telling you this, and another news source telling you that, and you decide you want to evaluate what you believe, right? what source has a reason to tell you one thing versus another? Matter of fact, and don't even feel like you have to choose, are any of these sources valid? Because you can come to that conclusion that no one's really telling you the truth.
That's true.
And that's possible. So don't feel like I have to choose which one of these sources is honest. You know, if it doesn't pass your barometer for effective information, then you got to discard it. And I know that's a very risky territory to go into because anybody can just say, I don't think that's true. This is that true.
That's right.
So it has to have room for error. But you at least need to question the motivations of where your information is coming from. Check your sources.
Okay. And then as a mathematician, as a computer scientist, as a man of science, I'd call you, what do you say to people who claim that they're, scientists as well, and they look at math like you look at math, but yet they claim that climate change is fake? Well, I should say man-made climate change. It's always been climate that changes, right? We know that. But the scientific evidence that NASA has come out and affirmed, and that the American Academy of Science and all these other science bodies, math bodies, engineering bodies have came out and affirmed that we have, man-made climate change, or other things where you have people who are quote unquote experts. They have the degrees. They're putting out research papers. They're actively in their field. They're going through peer research. But you have a lot of people who will say, no, that's fake. How do we know? Like, this guy's a PhD, but he's on a news channel and he says this other guy with a PhD. How as a scientist should we be through that kind of information when we as non-scientists, don't have the tools maybe to go and look at the research paper ourselves and figure out, well, is climate change real? Is it not? Maybe you don't have that kind of time, right?
Okay, so that's a very large issue. So I'm gonna try to take one, and I'm gonna count on people to use their intelligence to kind of extrapolate.
Okay.
Because these things can get very complex, and there is no one size fits all.
You're counting on your intelligence, guys.
So go do some math problems. You can't seem to get this figured out.
Okay.
But so we're gonna start off with climate change, for instance, right? That's a huge one we talk about. So it doesn't, like I said, there is natural climate change. The world does what it does. It's been around for billions of years, right? You can't say if the Earth was formed at one point, it had no climate if it didn't exist. So of course, everything can go into formation. Science reacts to the elements that you put into it and whatnot. And of course, man has added a lot of factors to that over time. So it's one thing to say that, okay, man-made climate change, we're putting all these gases in the air, and so we think that affects the atmosphere. And scientists are saying, hey, these scientists that were basically, as we heard, is paid for by these oil and gas companies at the time, and they hired these researchers for what? For profit, right? That's why they give you a job. And so it's like, okay, we're going to hold this information back. Don't tell people because it's going to affect our profit line. Businesses wanting to make money, that's not a hard line to draw. So you're going to go to the scientists. Well, the scientists, they have a conspiracy theory, okay, to make the world think something's true that it's not. Okay, take that position, but for what? You have to answer that question first.
Sure do.
Now, let's take it a step further, though. Then there's the heart machine that was worked on, and the government has documents on this readily available online to read. This stuff is not hard to figure out. So have we tried to weaponize weather? Yes. This is not new. Right. So when someone tells you man-made climate change isn't real, it's like, okay, we've tried to weaponize the weather, right? The climate can change on its own. It doesn't have to wait on us to do it because it might change and we don't even have to be on this planet. And three, if we weren't here, we wouldn't be putting, like, if I'm in a room and I leave a gas car running in my car, the fumes are going to fill up the room. It's going to be hot. It's like, that's just a small room. It's going to change the chemistry and the heat and temperature of the air, right? And it makes me sweat more. It's going to make my technology start to mess up because those supposed to operate at a certain temperature safely, right? So to say that us doing things in an environment can have no possible effect, you're pitting false options against each other. It has to be the heart machine, or it has to be unman-made, or it has to be man-made. It could be any combination of the three. right? And so being pushed into a false narrative, I feel like I have to choose. It's a trap.
Wow.
I got to be Democrat or Republican. It's a trap. You know, so that's just the way to say you have to look at the sources, dig up your sources. Like, okay, I don't believe the heart machine. We try to weaponize weather. Go do your research. It's not that hard to find that out. So you don't have to do conspiracy theory. You can find that out. There's government documents that will tell you that, readily available within a couple of keystrokes in Google. I've done it myself. Try it. So there you go.
I seen it on the History Channel back in the day, but now History Channel got all kinds of stuff that has nothing to do with real history. So they got aliens and all kinds of. I mean, I can't use that source anymore. So
let me just. I'm just gonna ask you a question real quick.
Okay.
So in other words, how do you decide who to believe?
Mm-hmm.
Check the motivations of your resources. Do your own research. Critically think. And fourth one, never feel like you have to make a false choice, because propaganda and trickery is out there because someone likely stands to benefit from your ignorance.
Amen. Okay. And the last thing I want to end on, and this is a big one, right? We probably can do a whole video on this. Mm-hmm. People like this section, we will. But you as a scientist, as a man of science, as a person who's read the Bible from beginning to end, has a very spiritual father who really has a great grasp of the Bible. What do you say to this argument that people have that tries to pit science against religion and religion against science?
That's one of those false options. That's another one of those. I have to believe that everything in the Old Testament and the New Testament and how the world was created and how it can be saved by believing as a Christian somehow has to mean that anything that says, hey, there are these processes that work that are they're scientific, though they're not in the Bible, so they're not fake. So if I believe in the Bible, I can't believe what a scientific study says, or I can't believe the data, or I can't rationalize anything that says God didn't have control of that. So there are, we covered the story of Einstein at one point. Among his scientific work, at some point he got to the point of questioning things in relation to the Bible.
Right.
And so it's like, think of that conundrum for a lot of people. You have a scientist studying things based on religion.
That's right.
Those two things shouldn't be able to mix. It's like running in the sky. You need to put your feet on the ground to create friction to run. You need to be able to get away from friction, at least on ground friction, to be able to fly.
Mm-hmm.
Those two things can't go together, but they can.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't have to be one or the other. So as far as feeling like you have to choose between one or the other, that's a false option. I mean, that's kind of just the bottom line there.
So if somebody came to you and they said that the reason I don't believe in climate change is not because of the data that's presented. Yeah, I'm from Texas. I guess it should be data. But they'll say, look at this data. It's not that. It's not the numbers. I mean, it all seems to kind of make sense. But it's my faith that God controls the universe, that God created it, and that God controls the weather, and God controls the world around me. And that's why I don't believe that we're doing these things, that we can do these things. What do you have to say to those people as a person who's read the Bible and a person who studies science?
I would say the dangerous clause when it comes to that religion, to religion in general, not just that one, is the principle that you cannot question God. Not only can you not question God, you cannot dare have the audacity to look into anything that he says, right? So when that comes into play, so if you can get past that, then I think there's a solution for you, right? Is if God is presenting you the tools to understand how his processes work, right? Wouldn't that, in a sense, just help you become closer to him? Right. If it's not just all about obedience, if it's about a relationship, right? And if you feel like, hey, if I understand what processes make it rain. Because we used to there are certain cultures that believe, hey, if we just dance and ask for rain, we'll get rain and our crops will grow. So our solution to starving and not having food is to dance, right? Mm-hmm. That's laughable now to a lot of us, because we know it's like, hey, if we dig up all the soil and don't have scenarios where water can run through the ground and recycle back to the air, we're not going to get rain. Mm-hmm. You know, if we're closer to a body of water, we're more likely to get rain because of the way, you know, the atmosphere works. And so that is something that we've come to understand through research, science, taking data, and just observing the world around us. Does that put us in opposition to God? No. Especially if the whole point of humanity is to survive and thrive, then knowledge will help get you there. God didn't take stupid people and say, don't listen to me, don't take my word. He took those around him who could teach. That's what Jesus was good at. He could teach, right? And he complained. He's like, when are you people going to learn? It was ignorant refusal to learn and not challenge things that frustrated Christ.
Right.
So
most other things.
Yes. Yeah. You go to the church and you flip over the tables. It's like, why are y'all kowtowing to these people? Like, why does this follow the system of the church? Don't ask questions. That was challenging God, right? Yep. And that's what was keeping the people down.
He didn't think too much. He didn't think too highly about rich people either. But that's a little story. But you know, I you know, for that, you know, I just looked up Genesis 2:15. Mm-hmm. In Genesis 2:15, you have the Lord, and he says, or you have the Bible, and then it says, then the Lord God took man and put him into the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and keep it. Mm-hmm. So that's what it said, to cultivate it and keep it. In other versions, it says to tend the garden. And so it's like in the Garden of Eden, we were, based off of the Bible, we were never put into the Garden of Eden to just hang out and relax and chill. We had a mission that God gave us if you want to go through the Christian tradition. The Christian tradition says that you had something you were supposed to be doing, and that was you were supposed to tend the garden. You were supposed to actually look after the animals. You were supposed to actually look after the fruits and look after the plants and everything, because that was your job, was to cultivate it and to tend it. So it was never something where you were on the planet that God created, but you couldn't change it. He actually put you there to change it, right? So that's one thing. And then also I would argue that if you were to go to Genesis, right, then you could say that you have God created Adam in his image, which if he created him in his image, then therefore you are like God. You are a representation of God on earth. And therefore, if you're a representation of God on earth, there has to be some powers and some things that you have the ability to change in the planet, in the universe that he created, because of the simple fact that you created in his image. I mean, I could flow with that logically. So I don't understand how that you know, it seems to be some kind of dichotomy between if you believe in religion and you somehow believe that you cannot affect the world around you.
Right. Yeah, it's a needless dichotomy. I think it's a relatively new perspective, right?
Right.
It hasn't always been that way. I mean, the founding fathers were very logical people.
Right.
A lot of people were very well, but they were all very devout followers of religion. The country where they came from, the Europeans, all were very strongly religious. You know, the papacy comes from European culture, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that somehow all these religious people had no need for developing information, technology, advancing systems to have them to survive, making water systems, electricity systems, making military weapons, whatever it is, like that science going hand in hand, instead of like, you know, we're not going to just wait for God to win our wars for us. We're going to wait for God to determine, you know, if we're going to have food or not. Let me not learn how to actually plant well. Let me not learn how to breed plants to make different types of food that are conducive to the type of soil we may have here. These are all things that take understanding, that just going on faith, you're kind of letting yourself be ignorant.
Right.
Which God does not push at all. Not if you really read the Bible.
No, and the thing with the founding fathers, I mean, you had a sprinkle of all types, right? So you had a lot of founding fathers who they didn't believe in God at all. You had founding fathers who were deeply religious, but you're saying their culture was that of religion at that time. That they came from that place where there was religion that inundated their society. Is that what you're getting at there? And that even with that, they still were trying to transform the world around.
Yeah, and that's kind of also a point to the fact that this whole dichotomy of, religion versus science, it's new.
It's new.
It's very new. It's a talking point at best.
Right. Now, even you look at the papacy, and you've seen like there were times when the Roman Catholic Church persecuted science, and so then you kind of had that real world, religion versus science. But for the most of the history of the papacy and most of the history of Christianity, it's actually been pro-science mostly. And they've come up with a lot of the institutions and a lot of the changes that we've had in the world through science, technology, and mathematics. For instance, insurance and the whole field of actuarial science comes from priests. We can go on and on and on about all the things that come from priests and come from the religious, the clergy. But then what most people focus on is the dark ages when there was a few popes who said, okay, no, we're gonna witch hunt and we're gonna get rid of the scientists and all that kind of stuff. And they say, no, that's religion. That's all religion.
Right. Yeah. And I think I'm not gonna give everybody a super history lesson. Just very general concepts. The threat to religion at that time and anything of that nature is not so much just science or technology, right? It's always in relation to power. It's in power, right? And so the threat to power in those situations being sometimes the church or the government that doesn't want you to think about things is critical thinking and evidence.
And evidence always has been.
Yeah, and that's all it was. And so that's why the church, kind of got to the point of sometimes condemning science, because if people learn to say that, hey, if you just do what we tell you as the clergy, and you can't read the Bible, only I can, then if you do what I tell you and give me your money when I tell you to, things will work out. And when it doesn't, don't take evidence or collect data and figure out why it didn't work. Just come back to me, and I'll keep running you through this same knowledge.
That kind of sounds like pimping.
I mean,
is that why they dress all nice?
Hey, the system ain't broken. It's been working for a long time.
You just listen to give me your money. Everything will be all right. That sounds like a pimp named Slickback. So I think you made a great point there. You look at in the present, and you look at Islam, and you look at how progressive Islam was, and how much they brought to the world when it comes to science, mathematics, engineering. And you look at the fact that we call algebra, it's named after a guy who was a Muslim and had a name that you can find in the Muslim world. And so the fact that to this day we're still talking about algorithms and we're talking about algebra, and then now if you look at those countries and you see how oppressive they are to science and technology, it's very interesting, just like what you said, and it comes down to more or less power. It wasn't the religion. Religion hasn't changed.
Yes.
The Quran hasn't changed, right? Islam hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is power and how they're using it.
Yes.
Very, very good point. So I think we come to a good place to wrap it up. I think this was very enlightening. I think we learned a lot. We have a lot of topics that we discussed in this. So to all of our viewers, thank you so much. Make sure you check out Worldwide Kings and what we're doing there. The website to check us all out is breakingthementalchains.com. That's breakingthementalchains.com. You can catch us on Twitter at Emancipate Yourself. And you can catch us on Facebook under our Facebook page, which is Breaking the Mental Chains at Facebook.com. So thank you so much for being with us. Make sure you get the new book, and we'll see you soon.